Mine at home. Okay, yeah, I think it's fine now. Okay. This isn't as big. When there are a lot of people, I like to stand because I want to be able to see everything. But a little bit smaller, I think I might have to sit down. Okay, so we're on the thing that talks about what was it? That heading of it. It's after the one in the box. So the I did that with her. And now I'm doing, oh, thank you. What do I just hold it up? Oh, and that one with the squiggly. Oh, okay. Very nice. This is kind of the end of the semester. Right, so you'll have it. Okay. I don't know. But I'm on the thing that says the Monta's message and it's on page 3. Yes, that's why I'm here. Last week I was like, come on. So you went to the RS/Aber. You now what made you, where were you staying? Oh, you have a son who lives there. Oh, I didn't know. Where does he live? Oh, because I saw in the middle talking to somebody, but then and looking and said, I do know that person. But when you're not, it's out of context. Wait, do you want to sit further back? That way no. It was the one that had, yeah, it still had to do with the thing about the just the Hasidim in general. So it's all I know is on page 3. I don't know where the beginning is. That's what I don't do. No, I'm not doing that. Not up Oh, I think it was the one that maybe that starts. So, and then it continues on beyond that. Right. Okay. So, I'm trying to think what I find. Well, this one, yeah, this one, I'm not quite ready. But on the middle, I'm not ready yet. I will give that to you, but I'm not quite ready. I don't know. You know, I have a lot of people. I know yeah, but this is yeah, how old is it? I wasn't sure the well, this is from something I write if you want it. Okay. Thank you. All right. Okay. Let's so let me yes, so the mind first we have the bottle gem, so I'm just considering this so and then I'll get out with new one for okay. When the Baal Shem Tov, he was just obviously this very special, extraordinary person. People responded to him. He must have been a very warm individual, and they respond in kind. That's why how Hasidus grew. And this particularly, it's southern Poland, northern Poland, which we'll get to a little while. That's where the Misnagdim starting. Like in Lithuania, right? And northern Poland, parts of northern Poland were also of the had the most influence of the Nadia. But southern Poland is where Hasidism, took off, and then it spread southern. And I'll get to that, but that's where we are. But at the time, he didn't like write down, he didn't have any sefer with his philosophy. I mean, it was all based on Kabbalah, right? Um, but again, he didn't write anything original. The next generation is this Maggid of Mezrich, who obviously was highly influenced him, but he was more of an intellectual. He started writing down um, some of the thought processes, what was involved, if you were influenced by Chassidus. And then there'll be a third generation where it's going to really proliferate. There'll be many, many more prominent Chassidus. I just have to get this. And, so, you know, oh man. Without it, that's why I make it a larger print, and it makes it just easier to read it. Okay, so you can read where it says that the Maggid of Mezrich is paper from 1708. I have a C before that means surface, that means about, but we don't know what. But he did die. We do know this. He died in 1772. So he sometimes is listed as Rosbear or Dover. Yeah. Elementary. A Maggid is the Maggid has to do. No, I don't think I have it. That means somebody who's a nice travels about preacher. You know, I mean they obviously would be based in one particular town, but they weren't just stay there. They would travel around and talk to. This is after a very down period in Jewish history, after the terrible Khmelnytsky riots in 1648, 49, and then it was followed by a series of Mashiach Sefer. These are false messiahs, and the people were just devastated. But before I even go into greater detail, background for the Messiah and their opposition to the Hasidim is because that was based on Kabbalah, and according to that whole time period, which covers maybe 30, 40 years of various. The most famous is Shabtai. He was, the most prominent of all these false messiahs, but the Rabbanim from the north in particular, because they felt that these false messiahs were being influenced by their dabbling in Kabbalah. So you have to understand why later they become very opposed to Hasidut, because that's also based on Kabbalah. So not to say that they didn't study Kabbalah. Many of them did, but they had a greater emphasis on learning and studying, becoming very erudite. The north, right? What became later from Mishnah, that means it's not gay to go against. They were going against this Hasidic movement. But for the people in the South, they weren't any like great yeshivas here or great Rabbanim. The more prominent Rabbanim in the north. They could, they felt like they could never achieve that level of Jewish learning. So here, like somebody like the Baal Shem Tov, the Maggid, and all the other Hasidim will come after them and they say, "Oh no, don't worry about that. There's another way to draw close to Hashem. It doesn't have to be just through study." Or in the North, that's what they put particular emphasis. That is, the very top way to write is to approach Hashem is through learning Torah and excelling. You have to understand the people in the South, some were scattered, one from another. There was no way that they had opportunity to sit and study and learn and really go to an extremely high level in Jewish study. So you can imagine probably some sense of loss and as if, but they can't possibly achieve this close level to approach Hashem, and that's why Hasidus appeal. Second, it had just come off of a very bad time period in Jewish history. So we're talking about, we're now 18th century Poland, and we'll see how the best is from the year 1700 to 1760, passes away. And then one of his disciples is going to be this Dove Bear, the Maggid of Mezrich. He himself was a very learned man. He also was a Maggid, these itinerant preachers that would go around and try to give chizuk to the people. There was a former Rav, his name is Rav Yaakov Yosef, who he actually did like some of the best teachings and compile them in a book. But they were mostly about just talking about his miracles. That's how all these stories have come down to. And some of them I know them more through later 19th century literature, when they began to tell various wonders. And these were not necessarily even religious writers, but there was a spurt there from the Haskalah, from the Enlightenment. They started where they wrote in Yiddish, but then also in Hebrew. So we'll talk about them in greater length, but I want to stick now right now to the 18th century. These, many of them are from time period. So again, we have two people who will be writing. This Rabbi Yaakov Yosef, he writes about all the miracles, the things that the Best has done. But the mother of which again, he had a stronger bent towards studying, Torah. So he's going to put down like a philosophic base to explain, what Hasidus stands for. Okay, yeah. Right, he'll be later. Okay, right, exactly. That's why the controversy. Right, it was all in that 18th century, and it's going to continue beyond. But that's where it's going to start. Now, obviously, this Maggid is a much more scholarly individual, to anybody who comes from the Best himself, was not a learned individual. But again, just bear in mind, though, that who was he preaching to? Mostly to these poor Jews living mostly in southern Poland. They're like lost. They're lost people. And he's coming and he's giving them a chizuk, and he's saying, and your way of, drawing close to Hashem, that's okay. And that's also good. Even if you can't sit and learn and excel. Right, go ahead. Oh, of course, yes. But I wanted to talk about where it began. Right. Yeah. Right. 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 Yeah. Right. That's what I just said. Right. Exactly. Yeah. These are more statements you're making. I told you that through prayer, through Hitlav, through thinking good, positive thoughts, even if you can't sit and study and learn all the time, it's okay. You can still be considered a very pious Jew, and you will approach. He sort of gave a more joyous slant, to being a Jew. Yes. Oh yeah, he's from the high school right there. Yes. Also. Right. Yeah. Oh, from being happy and celebrating. Yeah. Right. 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 Because these people had no opportunity to really go further. They didn't have the ability to really sit and learn and study. And So they felt lost. They felt lost. And this man's coming to them or through his stories. First of all, they thought he was a miracle man, you know, that he would you could go to him and he would guide you, you know, raise up your spiritual level, but without having to excel in Torah study. And that's the big difference. Wait, did you have a question before? Yes, I'm saying. I mean, it depended, you know, I wouldn't say they were all poor, but yes, there definitely were poor or peaches, but they were very rich. They were very rich in Torah learning. It's very different. These people, some of them were engaged in agriculture or other pursuits. They didn't have the opportunities to sit and learn all day, you know, and to really excel. That's what the Misnagdim were. They very, very emphasized Torah study. And if you didn't, you were they were out of you. I mean, even the best own brother-in-law thought he was an ignoramus. I mean, he was not a learned person, but he viewed, you know, yeah, just through this prism of joy, of happiness, that if you just felt within your soul, you know, that you were to become close to Hashem, that was enough. That was, and you're blessed. Yes, yes, more. I mean, other areas too. Right? Yes, exactly. Listen, you can find anything you want throughout anywhere in the Torah, or the commissioner. You can always find somebody, you know, who you something that was responsive, that that will appeal to you. You know, everybody that can say worships Hashem, you know, and she's a high spiritual level, but through different ways. But through the Misnagdim, you could only do this through Torah study, right? Through the learning. Okay. So let me finish up. Okay, so again, he's considered, we're talking about the Maggid now, Mesrich, you know, that he sort of becomes the architect, you know, for Hasidus, you know, and what are the basic principles behind which that movement stood. He is much more scholarly person, so that he was a learned individual, much more so than Besh. But so he's going to make this foundation, right? A basic Hasidic principles, and then build upon it. Yeah, well, I haven't gotten. First, I give like the general, you know, background, and then I go into. Okay. And this is what he's most important for, right? That he taught a group of men who will then carry on the, you know, the belief in Hasidus and their approach to Yahadus. It's all going to be coming from his various disciples. But he's like this, so to speak. The Baal Shem Tov was the first generation. Madu will be the second generation. And all the Rabbanim will come after. They are then the third generation. Okay, and these other men who follow him, then they're going to have. So it's going to spread in that way. Okay. So, all right, let me go on. Okay, so now I'm going to talk a little bit more about some of these things. And one was Elimelech of Legends. Okay. You told me to go back like 10 generations. Yes. Okay. 1800-year-old, 1800. Wow, beautiful, amazing. That's amazing. That's so nice. That's really special. Yeah. Right. Okay. Very good. All right. One more question, but then I'm going to progress. Yes. Oh, you did?
And I want you to know that conscious shifting that sets you how to keep it excited.
Oh.
Make sure you wash your hands.
Sorry.
That they come.
Yeah.
Come on.
Right. Look, even though my grandparents on one side they're Poland and the other side are from Lithuania, but I've never been back. I don't know if I'm going to go back. Mixed feelings about going back. I mean, there are hardly any Jews there. Beautiful, rich, and vibrant Jewish. I mean, millions were murdered. So I very mixed feelings about going there. All right, so Rabbi Mechel there's the Schneider Zalman of Lani. Okay. I would say that that is the chief of these branches. It's that they have the most impact, on people afterwards. Although all these other groups, adhere to their particular rebbe, but he sort of, you'll see, he sort of, because he was growing up in that time period when the Misnagdim were speaking out vociferously against the Hasidim and what they thought successes, in their behavior. He sort of like calmed the waters. I must say, I told you last time, I'm from a very Misnagish family, but I do remember my father saying that, oh, but the Babish, they know how, as opposed to other Hasidic groups, I mean, they was well versed, right? Yes, I don't know myself some of these names, but I'm mentioning some, and some I'm leaving out completely. Apparently, with somebody called Rob, not from Tversky, right, from Chernobyl. There's Otto Perla from Carlin. That's actually this is in Lithuania. So some of them they even in Lithuania. Not that the most of the Litvak Rabbanim, the Misnagdim, it was sort of like under. They would meet as somebody that, yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Okay. There's also Rabbi Lady Yitzhak Berditchev. He's very famous. Rabbi Nachman of Breslov. That's also, I think he's the one who's buried in Uman, right? That they always go to see. Okay. I don't know what those people there must think of this invasion. I know this is Ukraine, so this is not top of your list for tourist sites. And here's another one, Rabbi Menachem Mendel of the text. I pronounce it. Okay. All right. So I guess he was giving you some of the key things, and each one then formed their own dynasty. So from the Maggid, it's not like there's something from him, except he wrote a philosophical, base on which Hasidus, rest. But it's all those people who flocked to him and learned under him, and then they formed. So you have to understand, at the beginning, if you became a leader of a Hasidic, group, then the next person to follow you would have been somebody who was deemed at a sufficiently high level to carry on that mantle of that particular event. But over time, it became a relative. Usually a son, if there were, or even with Lubavitch, it's not sons-in-law. So it changed. On certain basis. So this business of adhering to a particular man, to these what they call tzaddikim, right? It's it began, but following the time period of the model, so more like you didn't certainly 21st century. Okay. Oh, this is right. When the Maggid dies, initially the next leader was probably Elimelech of Shens. And then his disciple was a man called Rabbi Yaakov Yitzchak Horowitz. And he was called the Hosea of Lublin. He did emphasize, intellectual study of the Torah. It wasn't just the joyous, attitude, and as you said, Idru B'Simcha. It's more like that. And actually, Lubla becomes the spiritual whole of Hasidus after, it's towards the end of that 18, toward the end of the, in Lublin. Right, right. Okay. And there are other people. Yes, yes, very good. Okay. Now here's telling you more now about the tzaddikim themselves, what they were in the people's mind. The weakest spot in the teachings of the best and the Maggid turned out to be their advocacy of a personal leadership. So it's not so much you became a follower. You weren't following them because let's see, their wonders or what they wrote or anything. It becomes like a cult. I'm sorry to say. And you would follow a particular Rebbe, whatever the Rebbe said, well, then you would do and act upon. I mean, is okay, not growing up in that. I find it hard to fathom when we have certainly on the misogynist side, there are many, many, many great, very learned people, but we didn't like worship them. We don't. We still don't, to this day. I wouldn't run to the Rebbe then was so but that's all but you would go to this person like to explain the halacha, certain issue arose. What's the proper because up until now, there was never in Yahadut, in Judaism, even though we had many, many, many great leaders that to look up to, but these Rebbes sort of became this intermediary between an adherent of a particular sect and God. So that, it's like you on your own, like you couldn't think independently. You had to go to the Rebbe proper interpretation. So we discussed this, but I'm just sort of reading it from here. It says the masses of Southeastern Europe in particular were so troubled. They had felt so lives so miserable. They were anxious to be as close to God as possible. And so they actually came to believe that these Rabban, the Rebbes, that they started to follow, that they had the ability, because of their very close connection to Hashem, that they could perform miracles. I've heard many stories of like women who didn't have any children, and go to the Rebbe, and they get them a bracha, and then they all of a sudden they had children, right? So they're looking to these right? I don't even know but these Rebbes, to guide them spiritually, again, to bring them closer to Hashem. Okay, and so you can just imagine, because I'm going to try to say why this terrible animosity between these two movements is because every town has a Rav. Now all of a sudden there are these Rebbes, and the people are going to them more for guidance than they are to the Rav. So there's definitely jealousy, going on there. Eventually, these men came to be known as tzaddikim, right? That they were these very righteous men. They held court, and they gave personal advice. Talked about. The Rebbe would usually have a very large home, so people could come to him. And what do you call that when you have? Yeah, well, for is a part is when you Yechidas, is that it? I don't know when you have me privately. Right. Yeah. I have to say, at one point, my husband, I'm just getting to know him, and I knew he liked going to the public. So I remember asking my friend who had sort of, is he a husband? I said, no, he's not. Let me tell you, I couldn't imagine brought a husband home today. Right. Okay, so one time I remember I went with my husband. He wanted to consult the Rebbe, but I refused to go. I mean, just not how. So, but he was a very brilliant. There's no question. Okay. Just to make sure I covered everything. Okay. So they're accepted now. They will now in these specific areas of Poland and other countries we'll learn about soon. They actually supplanted the role of the regular Rav, who might have been in a particular. Right, they come to know that deeply, they come forward, they get personal life. And I guess if you have that bent or thought and train to look at, a Rebbe, it almost takes off the onus of responsibility from a regular person because it's like they can't make the decisions themselves what they should do in life. But they went to the Rebbe and the Rebbe said to do, they would follow. Yeah. It's not always for halakhic reasons. No, it was not just for. Yeah, of course. Yeah, absolutely. Well, of course, they would have gone to them for halachic issues, but they were going to them for even like what I would do, a very mundane thing. Like they say, they can't seem to make a decision on their own. They can only function by what the Rebbe tells them to do. Okay. All right. Let's see what else I want to say. The word chassid means a very pious, individual. I mean, sometimes throughout Jewish history, certain groups of people are called chassidim, but they're not these kinds. It's just a term to describe, very righteous individuals. But these followers of these Rebbes, they felt that only their Rebbe could interpret Judaism properly. That whenever anybody else would say, no, that's not acceptable. My Rebbe says to do so and so, they would have accepted. Okay. It's interesting. And in their minds, those people who followed the Rebbe, as and their preeminent guiders in life, they look down the opposite on people who would just sit and learn Torah, that was not the proper way to act. So we now have two very prominent groups in Eastern Europe. They're going to be the Hasidim, and then I'll tell you more about Hasidim. Okay, and because of it's the worldview, it's the way they interpreted Jewish life, it spreads rapidly, very rapidly. Okay, here are some of the basic beliefs of Hasidim. One is that they believe that, obviously God. Well, it's part of it's in this not just a world also, but it's slightly different. The God, the Creator, is omnipotent. That He is all powerful. But we believe that too. But how important man is, and how. And I told you the Rebbe becomes this interloper between man, the Pashut man, and God Himself. Right. Okay. And again, it's all based on Kabbalah and going to different spheres and proving yourself, blah, blah, blah. There's always something good within a person, what's that principle of Yid, okay. But I learned that too. I'm not from a Hasidic family at all. And their big emphasis was not so much on studying Torah, but on prayer, on davening. I told you it's lahavud, right? The kavana, really, putting your whole heart and soul into prayer. And also this I never knew until one time. And apparently that became very popular, which it is today, that they go to the mikveh every day. You know, yes, sometimes, like, among, the Snadim, I mean, they'll go like before Yom Kippur, maybe for Rosh Hashanah too, but they apparently believe, or certainly Shabbos, they felt like you needed to purify yourself, and then, you would go to God. And if you ever go to Daven and BRS, where there is a men's mikvah, you will see these Hasidic men, in the morning, coming out of the mikvah. But both are Raton synagogue. And it's a little bit more than that. This, not at all. No, but there's a mitzvah, and they mix it in it, so they make use of it. I mean, my rabbi there, that's Rabbi Ephraim Goldberg. So, but he actually has leanings towards Hasidism. So my son used to know him at the yeshiva. They used to call him Roma. We always had some sort of a bent towards that. Okay. Emphasis obviously on Kabbalah. Okay. Actually, a ruling came out. Remember I told you there was an organization that sort of represented all the Jews living in Poland, Lithuania at that time. It's called Vad Arbaha. So this was an organization of 4 lands. They were in 4 different areas of Poland, Lithuania, and they would be the intermediary between the Jewish community and whoever, the king, the nobleman. But it came to an end. I mean, thing that actually added to continue existence. So this is like another reason why the Jews, are starting to feel some very low. Okay. I'm trying to remember what year it was. I think it's 1764. So right around that time period, passes away, and then the Maggid, right. So okay, so I think I've given you most of this that I wanted to share with you, and the different thought processes. Okay, now let's go on to the you'll know. All right. So the is anybody talking about yeah. Is anybody else? All right, let me just now do the goal. He's going to be the preeminent person, for the Mishnah movement. And again, Mishnah means that there are opposing against the Hasidic way of interpreting. First, I'm going to talk just a little bit about Vilna. Because by the year 1700, the Jewish community of Vilna stood in the forefront of learning and saintliness. Nowhere was knowledge so highly prized, and piety and scholarship so widespread. In the year 1720, a son was born to one of the distinguished families of Vilna, and they called him Yahweh. Right? And he turned out he was a prodigy, was a brilliant person. That's what his own means. His name was, his official name is based on the Gra, that acronym. That's Eliyahu ben Shalom. He's also called the Chassid, but not a Chassid, like the movement. I don't know about you, when I was a little bit, we used to get the Jewish press, and they always had some section. I have to read it. It's called Tales of the Odim. But it was this mushmash. I never knew when these people lived, or I mean, these are just wondrous stories and stuff. Then when I studied Jewish history in high school, I actually heard that there actually was a time period the Gaonic time period. So I never knew it was those stories they were telling me about those going of most likely not. I think they were just referring to, later time periods, but that these brilliant men, and so I don't know. um, and but I remember it was like I couldn't believe it. I was like, okay, talking about the Gaonic, they be like, oh, but that word also refers to these rabbis.
I know it. In Vilna, the painted and made the bust of it home. They were so good all of a sudden the Hippie they killed everybody.
Yeah, right.
And the municipality I saw thanks.
Listen, you can go to Spain in Cordova and see this statue there of the Rambam. Well, did they not throw us all out in 1492? And something like that? Yeah, it's ridiculous. Whatever, But now, because my mom is a famous name, so now, right, they do. They got making a fuss about it. So again, just to show you, I remember my mom also is for like data very fan and Eloy. That's another. It's like a genius. Eloy. Right. Somebody who's just very. He really was a Protestant. At the age of 6, he had completed the study of the Bible. I never know what they mean when they say Bible. Just Chumash or all time, but whatever. And he was already studying Gemara. A little 6-year-old. By 13, he had mastered most rabbinic and mystical literature. So this was not a man who was not afraid of studying Kabbalah, but not to take it to the extreme that the Hasidic. As he grew older, various rabbinic posts were offered him, including that of Vilna. But he steadfastly refused to undertake the responsibilities of being active rabbinate. And my Zayda, the opposite, he got numerous offers to be a rebbe in different yeshivot, but he liked being a rav of a community. That's his life. He preferred to live on a very meager stipend, very, very modestly, of that was left him in a relative's will, so he would have more time for his reputation grew despite his seclusion. Yeah, I watched the program, obviously not the Jews, but they were talking about God. They were trying to give some, psychological explanation for the type of person he was. I mean, he was very unusual, very. Before long, he was recognized as the unofficial spiritual head of all the communities of Eastern Europe. That's the same, even within the Hasidic world, I mean, he did recognize how brilliant this was. He was just not a Rebbe. And he obviously preeminent emphasis on studying. That is the most way to get close to. Eventually, he was referred to as just God, and everybody, this man from Vilna. Okay, and he cowered among contemporaries. That's hard for me to read this one. Right. He recognized all was not well in Jewish. People are very much down in the dumps at this time period. But he has a different approach to how to elevate spiritual, not the way that Hasidim do it, but this faith, hope, and joy of worship, which are all of them. But he felt that these are just byproducts. In other words, if you sin, you will come to a love and appreciation for God, and this will bring you to a very spiritual high, Whereas they felt, oh no, it's not so important. You don't have to just become a scholar. And most people don't have that intellectual ability to do so. So, but you can draw close to Hashem through prayer and, again, with joy and emphasis, and doing things that lift up your spirit. He says, you will be able to lift up your spirit if you sit and study Torah. So that's a big difference. I think this is so interesting. The Gaon recognized all was, but he considered the remedy offered by the the Baal Shem Tov, to be unworthy of Judaism. But he felt like it was too much poo-pooing, the emphasis on proper study, and emphasis, on learning. He said, they were seeking something away from Yahweh. Again, through his emphasizing Torah learning, that would elevate you spiritually. Right. Now remember, this was a man who also studied Kabbalah, right? And he was a brilliant mathematician. Yeah, I'm going to talk about that. So he said, the problem is you have to remove, like from your mind, in the Jewish fold, whatever complete interferes with his complete development. Of course, in his mind, and also all the people from that part of Europe, how would you completely develop your mind? It was only if you sat and learned Torah. That was the most. And so that there's a joy in studying, right? I know I mentioned this, Kevin, but I feel if you're ever somehow troubled, but if you sit and you study Torah, you go to a lecture, I don't know, it fills you with comfort, and that way you draw. So the Gaon refuses to make any changes in the traditional way, of how we look, how a Jew is going to elevate himself spiritually. He said that the masses needed to change, not to dummy down, the way that they observe, Yahweh, but they have to find, the answer to what they're searching for, but through learning, through studying Torah. There are three aspects of life which he did not want to change. One is he tried to simplify the prayers, the tefillos, by removing many piyutim. That was it. When I go to London, I daven to my son's shul, I talk Spanish, Portuguese shul, that my son always says, Amma, don't come too early because that's all the beginning is just for your piyutim. And I remember being in Rome and going to the main synagogue in Rome, so it's an Italian way, they're very unique, Italian. And also they're just couldn't even find my place. That's what I think. Lots of things. And it's just a different way of, this was their way of elevating spiritually. I can't at all. Listen, I don't know about you, but let's say even when you go to show some of those tefillah, battle ones, and on Yom Kippur or sure on Tisha B'Av, just read the English. I can't possibly follow the Hebrew. I just read. To me, it's more important that you should understand, what you're saying, what you're reading, than to be breaking your teeth on a Hebrew. Okay. Come on. So he just follows the shul, which all these piyutim were eliminated. Okay. Thank you. Right. It makes life easier for us. He also taught that students who gathered about him to avoid, he taught the students who did gather about him to eliminate, on page 2 of the Gaon, that he should, when they study Gemara, that they shouldn't, remember at one point, century or two before this, there was a big emphasis on the pill-pull method, of sort of going in a circular fashion to try to understand different things. He said not to. He was actually opposed to it. Just study, great, learning. Don't try to pretend or show off. You consider to be brilliant. Just and master the material. later on Chaim of Volozhin, this great yeshiva of Volozhin.
Mhm.
So he carries on that tradition of the Gauls. And this goes to what you were referring to. He also felt that Jewish learning uh, were excluding too much of secular. That he felt that that would enhance your understanding of Torah, even performance, of the various mitzvot. That you don't have to be afraid. I mean, I always was always brought up that way. I mean, I became a school librarian, and I would have these children come in sometimes, and mostly those children, and they could only borrow certain books. Now, why a little boy can't take out a book on cars? I never could. What are you afraid of? Why can't like? Why you can only take it? And even among the books that are Jewish, there's some published like Carbon Company that they're very modern. Uh, it's not going to hurt them. I mean, if you raise your child in a certain way, they'll be fine. Yes. By taking right, but I'm just saying, I don't have that. I never was raised like that. I guess so. Yeah. Right, no, I understand. Uh, right, right. But again, from my background, I mean, you don't have to be afraid of something. And sometimes I might read a book, and obviously the characters or behavior I don't consider to be exemplary. So it just puts it gives me more. It, no, it's giving me. So I compare it then to what God has us is and what He's teaching us, and I see how much more beautiful that way of life is. So I'm not influenced, you know. I'm just not afraid. I think that's it. I'm not afraid of being exposed to other ways of thought. Whatever, two different worlds. Yes, right. Yeah, right, sure. Ah, right. Well, I never did either. Um, right. It's also a way to respond to that outside world. You're just going to cut yourself away from it. Um, okay. Now it's interesting. Now his influence though is not going to be as powerful though as that of the Besh. There are going to be many, many more Jews who are going to follow the Hasidic bent because they didn't feel the need to excel in anything, just approach God through joy, through again through much emphasis on davening, uh, and um, and then you have this Rebbe, this intermediary, who would guide you and give you any answers to any problems or issues that arose in your life, whether personal or even communal. Um, so whatever. It's yeah. Right. Although you think people in the literature world didn't work, I mean, they certainly did. I mean, if you look at pictures from the yeshivas, late 19th, early 20th century, and you see these guys, they're all clean shaven, they're very cast. I mean, I don't know if you've ever seen any pictures like that. They're dressed. I don't understand personally. I can't understand it. I mean, I certain level, I understand it that, but why these Hasidim have to still cling to a dress? And I just,
That's how they're.
Well, that's how they keep themselves different from everybody else. Well, even in Litvish yeshivas, it's like that also.
So the women.
Yeah. It could be, I don't know. My daughter once thought this was funny. She had spent her year in Israel at a school that was more right-wing than I would have. But figured, listen, I wasn't had the experience of a year in Israel, blah, blah, blah. She writes us a letter home. Ma, I met this guy, he wants to just sit and learn, and I'm going to support him. And she's going on and on, and then at the bottom of the, ha, just joking. Yeah, but she had this. I said, I'm getting, I said, the joke. My husband goes, oh my God, yeah. All right, it's always getting close to my end. So I hope you enjoy the sheer. Next week we'll talk more about the Gaon and then that really big dispute between the two movements. And it has also been out with you guys. Thank you. What? Oh, you need another one? Oh, so you would like to have. Okay. Oh, you're a Wow. No. I just have to turn this. Okay. No, not. Enjoy talking to you. Thank you, and you also.